Hi, it's June 8th. It's June 8th. The time is going by really quick. And just welcome, and thank you for your support. So, today is 2,137 days since Richard was forcibly removed from his barracks room there on Fort Bliss to be forcibly taken to the arms room in the basement, a soundproof room where they took his life. Yes, you heard it right. This was internal. This was code red. Lalani Hart, the mother of Richard's platoon leader, called it a code red. She wrote a paper on it. Her son is the prime suspect. She's prime suspect with their cousin, CID agent Tavita Nusa on Fort Bliss. That's right, intelligence agent involved in this, tampering with the records, with the files to cover it up. And his brother is Solomon Nusa, the major in charge of mortuary operations, because Richard's body was stolen off of Fort Bliss and trafficked across international lines, international border into Mexico, into Juarez, Mexico, which is in the state of Chihuahua, Mexico. So you'll hear a lot about the Chihuahuan governor, Maru Campos, who made the illegal treasonous treaty with Governor Greg Abbott of Texas. And there's breaking news every day, every day. And I'm going to burn a little bit of midnight oil today. Trying to, I have these lights, so sometimes I have to squint. So sorry about that. Okay, so let's get started. Today is really amazing. I have a video I want to play for you. Let's see if I can, because it's about the War Department under Pete Hegseth has reevaluated. So the Pentagon has reevaluated religious groups. Okay, religious groups. And for Christianity, they did not include, matter of fact, they took off the list. I didn't realize that it was on the list. Otherwise, I would have, we would have written a letter to them. We would have written a letter to them, but maybe all of our letters included this, that the Mormons are not Christians. And why did we care about that? Because the prime suspects in Richard's case, there was this common denominator through all the people that were harassing us and threatening us and obstructing justice, and even the prime suspects were Mormon. It seemed like this Mormon faction had become cartel, and they have become cartel. We figured it out because of the Chihuahuan Mormon colonies that grew and were double citizens, dual citizens, and you know they have a huge presence in the CIA and the FBI. We know that we have corrupt CIA and FBI agents, and in Richard's case, they happen to be Mormon or connected to this Mormon faction. So this matters a lot to us, and this matters a whole lot to us. It seems to be a common denominator in the Walmart mass shooting case also. And so for the War Department to look at the designations of religious groups and to take the Mormons off of the Christian designation is very important, because in our investigation, we've also found that many of this Mormon faction that are prime suspects and that reached out to us would pose or be imposters, would impersonate Christians. And when they filled out their forms, they wouldn't put down LDS or Mormon. They would put down Christian on their documents, their um, official documents, applications, and etc. And so that would mislead the investigation, right? Because you didn't see that they had a connection, that this was a connected group, that this was a cartel group. And so, and clearly, I thought that that was very fraudulent and also misleading, deceptive. It was very deceptive. And so I called it out. I called it out on this. And when I say I mean our family and our investigative group. We thought it was very deceptive because the truth was not out there. That because they were part of this Mormon faction. When we found out, we reached out to their Mormon leadership, and we didn't hear anything back. Not anything back. This is, huge, and not even a condolence letter was sent back. And we found out that there had been many other problems. Let's say, just for example, Leilani Hart. Leilani Hart got into uh, such a ruckus outside of her place of uh, the Mormon community there that they had to call the MPs on her. Um, so why not communicate with us when she's a prime suspect in the murder a of a Fort Bliss whistleblower soldier, and dismembered, and just horrific, absolutely horrific. And of course, the connections with the Walmart mass shooting case. And no, we didn't hear anything back. And like I said, not even a condolence letter. So, this is, yeah, the silence speaks volumes, right? The silence speaks volumes. So for the War Department to, look at these designations and to take the Mormons off of the Christian list, um, we were very grateful because that means that the truth will be hopefully will get more out there, and it will help future investigations. Now, why did the War Department take the Mormons off? Because a lot of the Mormon leadership is very angry about this. Okay, they are up in arms about this. Um, but why are they up in arms about this? They're Mormons. They're not Christians. Now, you would think that they would be proud Mormons, right? But they're not. They're not proud Mormons. Why not? They want to be considered Christians, but they're not considered Christians. You can't um, have your cake and eat it too, so to speak, right? You can't deny the creeds of the Christian faith, which are clearly the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, and the Athanasian Creed, right? Of course, there are councils of the church, and there are, but historically, all Christians say, I believe the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, and the Athanasius Creed. Those are the absolute must believes for Christians. And if you don't believe those, right? If you don't believe what is set out in those creeds about the nature of God, about the Trinity, about the salvation is by grace, right? If you don't, then you're not a Christian. And, I'm not, that's your choice, right? That's your choice. If you want to believe what Mormons believe, then you're a Mormon. Or if you want to believe what Buddhism believes, then you're a Buddhist. If you want to believe what a Mohammedan believes, then you're a Muslim, right? So if you want, so it's that's fine. That's fine, right? But do not call yourself a Christian if you're a Mormon, if you're a Buddhist, if you're a Mohammedan, so or a Jewish person, right? So, and many a Hindu, whatever, right? Um, so this was really a huge problem throughout our whole investigation. The deception the deception. And the deception is so big that they even create like Christian churches, because you have to remember that this Mormon faction is deeply tied to the funeral fraud, right? The funeral fraud. So they even created Christian churches, right, to promote their funeral fraud, yet they were members of um, the Mormon, I don't know membership in their Mormon uh, community, right? Because they have to pay 10% tithe, and they're very connected, of course, with NASA. Okay, very connected, because their faith believes that they will ascend, or they call it something else, and I'm just doing this by memory, but that they will one day get a planet of their own. They will become a god and get a planet of their own. So that's why they really are pro NASA, pro going to spending loads of money going to Mars and stuff. And I think that is really important for people to know, because millions and millions of dollars, or billions of dollars a year, are spent for taxpayer money go to NASA. So, and then of course the CIA and the FBI have a huge presence of Mormons in there. And I think that is important too, because they are very part of the investigations, and of course what's going on in Mexico with the CIA agents that recently were killed in an ambush, and the ambush has been confirmed. And I think we're like one of the only people that are reporting that it was an ambush that killed them. Yes, their vehicle fell into a ravine, a deep ravine. Yes, it was on fire. But this vehicle that these CIA agents were in, this is former Marine Captain John Black and uh, drone operator Richard Johnston. There were more CIA agents there, but the two of those died in this ambush. Um, this vehicle was a special vehicle. It was from the prosecutor's investigative office there. It's reinforced. It's bulletproof. It's meant for operations that can be very dangerous. But this was a rogue, unauthorized, federally unauthorized operation, which is treasonous for Maru Campos to and her administration to carry out without notifying and getting the approval of the federal Mexican government. So she's under investigation for treason to the homeland. And this vehicle that they were using, so they're using taxpayer, in this case, Chihuahuan taxpayer or Mexico's taxpayer money for this vehicle, very expensive, reinforced, like I said, bulletproof. And so if it fell in the ravine, it would not look the way it looks. Something more happened, and it has been confirmed that it was an ambush. And the latest news, and first I'm going to let you watch a few minutes of this um, video to really let you know that we're not the only ones that are pointing this out about the Mormon faction, about the deception. And, because I think that we need to have corroborating evidence, and we do. We have corroborating evidence everywhere, and very, very good sources. So let's get this started. This is by Legally Armed America. Legally Armed America. Let me put my. Okay, here we go. Hmm.
Leadership and local authorities in Utah. We're talking shared university networks, shared religious circles, meaning Mormons, and highly insular business connections. The internet started calling this behavior an insular protection racket. In Utah culture, there is massive social and financial pressure, including a mandatory 10% tithing system where business success is often equated with righteousness, again, in the Mormon religion. When things went south, these interconnected networks appeared to close ranks to protect the brand over the victims. So under immense public pressure and facing a public relations disaster, corporate headquarters finally severed ties with those franchise owners and offered to compensate the victimized family. But the damage to their squeaky clean image was already done. The public saw exactly how these tightly knit corporate networks operate when exposed to daylight, and again, they were wrapped up in this whole Mormon community. The corruption went deep within law enforcement in that Mormon community. They were, regardless of who was right, they were protecting the people who were wrong in that case. Meanwhile, the Mormon church leadership is aggressively pushing massive infrastructure projects across the country, often against the direct wishes of local communities. Fairview, Texas, they're pushing through a massive 30,000 square foot temple featuring a 120
Very
foot
close to
tall
Allen,
steeple.
Texas.
The town originally pushed back but faced intense legal pressure and lawsuits from the multi-billion-dollar church apparatus. Now local officials are practically begging them to scale it down to protect the small town skyline and avoid massive traffic issues. This is the exact same standoff is actually happening in places like Springfield, Missouri and Missoula, Montana. The church claims this is a sign of massive global growth, pointing to 55 new missions being opened, but the actual data tells a completely different story. They're lying about their religious growth. Independent demographic surveys show that actual active membership in the Mormon Church in the United States is flatlining or declining. Retention is at absolute crisis levels. Data shows that only about half of the people raised in the faith still identify with it when they become adults. Why? Because the moment young people look into the historical record on the internet, they discover the truth about early doctrines, controversial financial dealings, and the revisionist history of their founding. They might convert people quickly overseas, but activity rates in those foreign areas frequently drop to below 10 and 30%. And we can't ignore the ongoing legal battles regarding accountability. There are numerous active lawsuits involving allegations of serious misconduct handled poorly by local leadership. Critics and legal experts have pointed out that the church's internal reporting hotlines often seem designed to protect the institution from liability and contain the information internally rather than immediately involving outside law enforcement. They're paying out massive, quiet legal settlements while maintaining a public stance of absolute moral superiority. All of this is backed up by an incredibly massive financial empire. Remember the Ensign Peak Investment Fund scandal? They were officially fined millions by the SEC for actively using shell companies to hide billions of dollars in assets from the public eye. They take hard-earned tithing money from working-class families to fund a massive corporate real estate empire, all while playing the victim when the public demands transparency. Online communities are absolutely exploding with stories from former members detailing intense social control, institutional shunning, and a culture demanding absolute obedience to the leadership. This isn't functioning like a traditional community of faith. It looks like a massive multinational corporation designed as a church. Now, a quick side note. It's so odd to me that they're running from the name of being called Mormons. Like growing up, I remember seeing them promote themselves as Mormons. Like they literally have a website that was Mormons.org.
They're all over Germany too.
And they promoted themselves as we are Mormons. Now suddenly that's a bad thing. This whole we're not Mormons anymore, so use the full name only mandate kicked off in August of 2018, right after Russell Nelson took over as president and, quote, prophet. He fired off an official statement banning nicknames like, get this, Mormon or LDS, then heavily reinforced it in his October 2018 address titled, The Correct Name of the Church. This dude claimed that this change was a direct command, declaring that utilizing historic nicknames was giving a massive public relations victory to the adversary. In this case, they're calling their adversary Satan.
Impersonate the word Christian.
This is the truth, because it distracted from their claims of being centered on Christ. Nelson had actually been pushing this agenda since about 1990 when he was a, quote, apostle, giving a nearly identical address back then. But once he secured the top seat in the Mormon Church, he forced it through the entire corporate apparatus, sweeping website overhauls, app updates, social media purchase, rigid press-style guidelines, even pressuring major media global outlets like the Associated Press to comply. The massive multi-million-dollar Mormon.org domain was entirely scrubbed and redirected. It was a complete top-down corporate pivot. You might be thinking, why this sudden institutional panic? Well, the internet didn't help them any. Officially, the PR spin is about honoring the true name of the organization. The reality is, it is damage control on an industrial scale. As we just established, their actual theology has always placed him completely outside traditional historic Christianity, teaching three separate physical deities instead of the Trinity, a father with a physical body of flesh and bone, Jesus as the spiritual brother of Lucifer, and utilizing extra scriptures like the Book of Mormon to override the Holy Bible whenever their doctrines conflicted. But for decades, the church actively leaned into the Mormon moniker, spending tens of millions of dollars on global "I'm a Mormon" advertising campaigns and producing a feature-length movie called Meet the Mormons. Yeah, they created that. The Mormons, the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, if I got that right, created the movie We Are the Mormons. Now they don't like it, because then the internet age arrived and provided instant access to their documented history. We're talking structural polygamy hidden from public, early doctrines on blood atonement, Joseph Smith's origins utilizing folk magic and seer stone in a hat to generate text, and deeply controversial racial doctrines that barred black members from their priesthood until about 1978. So once the public could look up these facts, their retention rates plummeted, particularly among youths who leave the moment they see the objective history. Active participation rates outside the Utah religion are reportedly as low as 10 to 30%. This rebranding was an institutional attempt to sanitize their public image, sound more biblical, if you will, obscure their highly insular doctrines, protect their tithing revenue streams, and of course distance themselves from historical baggage without changing any core tenets. The contradiction, though, is staggering. They monetized and promoted the Mormon brand for generations and then suddenly declared it unacceptable. This recent Department of War decision to separate them from traditional Christian classifications proves that this massive marketing campaign completely failed to convince anyone actually looking at the underlying theology. But some people are mad. Mike Lee, politician from Utah, is a Mormon, or a Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint person? I mean, what do you call them now? Jesus Christ of Latter-day Sainter? Is that what Mike Lee would be now? Lee, who's a devout member of the church and a BYU grad, has been vocally blasting the federal government over this administrative shift. From his perspective, the Department of War completely separating the church from the general Christian category is an intentional administrative snub and a display of institutional bias. Lee's argument is that the very name of the organization is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So to him, a federal agency deciding they don't qualify for the Christian prefix on official military records is a direct insult to their faith. He and other Utah politicians have been demanding answers, framing the Pentagon's code cleanup as a form of bureaucratic exclusion. But here's the reality check. Mike Lee can complain all he wants. The Pentagon's looking at this from a theological standpoint. They think they've made the right decision. While Lee views this as a targeted attack on his faith, the military's administrative decision simply aligns with what traditional theologians have said for 2 centuries. The underlying doctrines are fundamentally different. It shows you just how protective these high-profile political networks are when the institutional image gets challenged by actual federal policy. Here's the bottom line, though. The Mormon Church, or whatever you want to call them, is trying big time to align themselves and look more mainstream instead of as kooky as they have in the past. But the cracks in the foundation grow wider every single day. The theology places them completely outside traditional Christianity. Their insular business networks look highly compromised. Their massive construction projects are alienating local communities, and their real membership numbers are in a massive downward spiral. The Department of War looked at the facts and made their decision.
Okay, so and also we were notified that the Book of Mormon has had a lot of deceptive problems. One time even, It was quoting Shakespeare. It was supposed to be older than Shakespeare, but it was quoting Shakespeare, and they had to recall them and republish them. Um, I think they've recalled to correct mistakes and republished um, like a dozen times. So, there is a pattern. Do I care about that? Well, I care in as much as our son's case and what's going on, this deception, this pattern of deception. They have a pattern of deception, and they want to deceive. Why would this Mormon person be so offended that he can't be called a Christian when he's not a Christian? He's a Mormon. And, they want to have this pattern of deception to cover up um, the disproportional amount of Mormons in the intelligence agencies, I believe, and also the dual citizenship of many of these Mormons that are located, have history in Chihuahua, and then move into Arizona and to Texas, and of course, maybe in police records when they get caught with the cartel activity, like you know. Like those prime suspects in Richard's case. And I'll tell you who told me, who tipped us off on that they were Mormon. And then we looked into it. And that was James Hart. That was when I spoke to James Hart on the phone. He's the one that tipped us off that this was a group of Mormons. And so it was the prime suspect in the taking of our son's life's father that ran the IDS Pueblo in the VA that is, well, in paperwork has been accused of so much fraud within the VA death benefits for and any benefits for the veterans, that he's been accused of major fraud, and also the worst type of crimes against children, the worst type of crimes against his own children, and illegal guns, and having the worst type of crimes against children videos, or yeah, movies in the household, and yeah, many other major crimes, felony crimes. And so this is, it's important to get it right, because if your ideology, we have to know what your ideology is. And when I mentioned that these big temples are being built, um, and the one that is being built in Texas is right there by Allen, Texas. And why is that important? Because that shows you that there is a large amount of money, that's Mormon money, in order to build this large temple in that area. And that area is predominantly um, defense contractors and intelligence workers. And it's also where Patrick Crucius is from, and the father is from, that is a disciple, of course, with connections to El Paso, and with this orchestration of the Walmart mass shooting, which all evidence indicates is very connected to the Mormon faction, that are the prime suspects in the taking of our son's life. So that is why this is so important, because John Brian Crucius, Patrick Crucius's father, was a disciple of this Brazilian guy who's in prison now for 600 years because of his serial um, worst type of crimes against women down in Brazil, and this promotion by Oprah, um, and these baby farms, and it's just it's so bad, y'all. It's so bad. But you can look him up. This Brazilian uh, criminal that is tied to Patrick Crucius's father and to Oprah. And to Oprah, that means, Santa Fe uh, to Zorro Ranch, to Beto O'Rourke's family ranch that was right above Zorro Ranch. Um, so it's really uh, all of this matters a great deal to Richard's case. So going to the the next topic, and I'll display that. But here is I can't zoom in, but here is this reinforced bulletproof um, major vehicle. I think it's, SUV, suburban kind of vehicle, uh, you know, that La Jornada, and I hope I'm saying that right, is reporting on that the CIA agents were killed in an ambush. But this report is about a rifle a rifle that was given to the CIA agents for this unauthorized operation by the AEI, which is the counterpart, the Mexican counterpart. So the Mexican counterpart is weaponized, giving a weapon to the CIA agents in an unauthorized rogue operation, so illegal, y'all. And I hope you read the article we put up because it's blows your mind. And go if you speak Spanish, God bless you. And I think they even will translate it for you when you go to La Jornada. But it just you will just be blown away by this the treason, the level of treason in this, um, because they're just acting as their own state, right? And what happened is they gave the weapon, but then when this ambush happened, and they could not because the fire was so hot and it was down in a ravine, and they tried to get the bodies out. Now we know this, it already has been reported that the two CIA agents that lived through this, because there were four CIA agents, two died, two lived. Two, the CIA agents with the other group were trying to get the bodies out to dispose of the bodies, like what they did to Richard, so that they would be caught, right? But they didn't. It was just too hot, and the ravine was too far down for them to do that. But what they did do was take the weapon that they knew would be problematic, and they exchanged it for another weapon. Okay. So this is the weapon swap cover up. And that was absolutely led by the Mauro Campos administration, Cesar Haragi. And there's a lot of information coming out because Cesar Haragi, we know it's been confirmed that he's talking, that he is talking. He's probably making some plea deals and giving some information. This is looking very bad for Mauro Campos, and it should, because she's under investigation for treason to the homeland. And that could, and the way she did the treasonous treaty and misused the Mexican flag, which, Mexico has very strict rules on how you can use their flag. She could end up with 40 years for the treason, 6 years for the flag, 46 years in prison. That would be the rest of her life. And they do have one little uh, chance of execution, and that is for this. So she's looking at some serious, serious penalties, maybe even her own life for what she's done. And of course, we know what she has done with embezzlement, with being Sinaloa cartel, with so that means a lot of fentanyl. I call her the El Chapo fentanyl governor of Chihuahua, Mexico, Maru Campos. What she did with her mother with this funeral fraud, 400 bodies piled up in one go, um, and rat infested, no potable water, no air condition, sacrilegious, absolutely sacrilegious, and giving fake ashes to families. And, her mother was allowed that to happen. And of course, you have the Purchase Arellano Caron family that are, part of their cartel network, the El Paso cartel narco network, um, which, and then the facilitation of all of this, okay, goes to that treasonous treaty. And that was done by the El Paso cartel operative and double agent Alejandra de la Vega Foster. Because look, she was on the commissions for the intelligence and law enforcement, the committees for that. And Juarez, because she was part of the administration for the Pan Pre party there in Chihuahua, simultaneously part of the Governor Abbott administration. And, giving cartel access, reciprocal access to Mexican and U.S. databases, intelligence databases, surveillance networks, including drones, and to visas, to American visas, so that they could buy houses, which would, they use for laundering money. Also, to get the driver's license and everything. Yeah, this is huge, huge organized criminal activity that is horrific, and it's terroristic. So this is absolutely very serious. And what they did to our son is an act of war. It's an act of war. And so we had a very win-win day, a win-win that this is getting exposed, and that the deception of this Mormon faction that want to say they're one thing when they're another thing, when their ideology, when their goals are one thing, and then they want to call themselves another thing that has totally different goals. Christians have uh, goals and duties, and Mormons don't have similar goals and duties. So it is really important to distinguish the two. Uh, and 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 it was important for James Hart to distinguish it too, wasn't it? Yeah, in our conversation, it was important for him. There was a big, it was a big deal to him. And he had to mention it to us. So, so he knows what the ideology means, and what the duties are of this Mormon faction, what their cartel duties. Yeah. So, okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Danielle, for coming on. It's, I think covered just about everything. Let me make sure because there was so much going on today again, every day. And if you're sending me, um, yeah, I can even show you some pictures. I think because this went viral, of course, this one. And this is John Black here when he was a Marine captain, a U.S. Marine captain. Here's a better picture of the vehicle. It's just totally burnt out, you know. Um, so that's important. And then here, of course, here's Alejandro de la Vega, here's Mauro Campos, and here's one of the meetings. This is a follow-up meeting after the treasonous treaty. They kept expanding their treaty, and it caused a lot of death, including the death of John Black. So, um, yeah, I put that up there. Oh, yes. And there's a lot of information coming out of the DA's office that we'll be addressing probably tomorrow. And, you know, it just reminds us that the DA in that office is a fraud and a fake. That's James Bonneau Montoya. And, you know, he can't get away from this. 2028 stamp for 2024. Um, sorry, it doesn't cut it. You don't make these mistakes. We notified him right away. And then, of course, you know, months later, probably a year later, oh, yeah, way more than a year later, they went in there and committed more crimes by tampering with the documents, just Xing it out like they could just exit out. No, he's a fake and a fraud. He is not installed constitutionally. The Texas Constitution is very clear and very simple on how to install as a district attorney. So when you get appointed or when you get voted in, there's a procedure that you have to follow to be legally installed. And one of those is you have to sign an anti-bribe statement of officer. This is from that. He did not, it's just so messy because you have to sign it before you take the oath. And that's not what happened. Okay. I don't even think he submitted one properly at all. And, you know, then that means that he has not sworn that he did not take a bribe. And that is very important to the Texas Constitution that before you take your oath of office, otherwise your oath is null and void. So his oath of office is null and void. He is a fraud and a fake legally. So that means that any cases that he handles, his office handles, is a botched case. This is um, uh, really keeping from the people of El Paso justice. Because if they don't have a legitimate prosecutor, then they can't get justice. And so this is how deceptive this is. And so I wonder if he's part of the Mormon faction, right? Because my opinion is that that needs to be investigated, just like Patrick Crucius and his family, because of location, and because of their business and because of their connections. That needs to be investigated. Are they part of this Mormon faction? Who gave them the orders to orchestrate the Walmart mass shooting, a very bloody, staged mass shooting? Who gave that order? And Beto O'Rourke. Where are his loyalties? Who is his group? Is he part of this Mormon faction? Because he targeted President Trump. This Walmart mass shooting was part of the targeting of President Trump. And it was bloody. And of course, that is the main reason what Richard was whistleblowing on that they did not like. They could hide the criminal trafficking, even if it's 500,000 children that were trafficked through Fort Bliss, which is true, Um, they could hide that, but the orchestration of the Walmart mass shooting to target President Trump and the election fraud and tampering, they're very sensitive about that, aren't they? I mean, the media won't even admit that there is such a thing as election tampering, and that, the latest interview with President Trump, where he closes down the interview because the media, the journalist, the media, the interviewer can't even admit that it is outlandish, that there's something wrong in California when California cannot count its ballots quicker. Okay? That they do all this ballot harvesting and everything, that there's something wrong there. She couldn't even admit to any of it. Oh, that's just the way California counts her ballots. That there is fraud. And of course, we know that there is plenty of proof of fraud. And in Richard's case, a lot of proof of fraud and deception. And now we heard it from legally armed, right? Legally armed America, that there is a problem with deception and fraud with the Mormon faction. And he's broader with it, but I keep it at the Mormon faction. So thank you so much. God bless you. And thank you for sharing. Please share all of these. I probably should say it more at the beginning. I've been watching some videos and they say it at the beginning. Please share, because then our reach is further. So yeah, we really appreciate that so much, because our reach needs to get out there to drive these very corrupt and compromised officials, not 100%, but a lot of them, to do their job. Because even in the Christian faith, we believe that even a unjust judge will give you justice when the people, when society never give up and demand it and demand it. And so thank you so much for helping us do that. And we will be back